live.
Hello.
So, yeah, welcome. This is episode 2, and I think we all agreed that we'll change the name every episode. So, what should this be called? I was
Yeah.
thinking Zero Preparation. That's a good name.
Yeah.
I like that idea because, like when you have to prepare something, all of a sudden, you don't want to have to do that, so you procrastinate or you say, let's put it off.
Yeah. Too
But
much
if
work.
there's no preparation required, then there's no anxiety about
You can't put it off.
having not prepared.
Yeah.
So, that's my idea.
I think that's a very good technique. Yeah.
That's just a general good principle for living
I,
life.
I agree.
Never prepare.
Never prepare, then you don't get anxious, and nothing can go wrong.
That's right. Yeah.
Good. Well, I've learned something already.
Okay. So we got the name for
Yeah.
today, and so what are we actually going to talk about or do?
Well, here's one idea that I had that I didn't prepare, I guarantee you, which was last time we were talking about feeds.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, well, I'll start off with an easy example that kind of reminds me of all this stuff. Is you remember Kramer had his idea for a coffee table book that is also a coffee table.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that's very related to what we were talking about last time with combining these feeds together. That's also a feed.
Yeah.
And then I was just thinking, like, it feels like doing that kind of thing in general is fun, and I was just wondering, like, what are cool examples of that, and as I was kind of talking to you about, there's another one, basically this exact feed idea with this website Cyrate, where it's like, what if users can come and click on stuff indicating what they like, and that could form another feed. So in some sense, like, users are feeds.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
And then I was just kind of thinking, well, maybe this is kind of a little bit like, what they do in certain kinds of programming languages where they make functions, things that you can pass around as variables. And I was just kind of thinking, like, what's the name for that general technique? And why don't we use it everywhere? Or should we use it everywhere? I don't know.
I mean, yeah. I don't know what the name for the general concept is, like higher order functions or first class feeds or something.
First class something, yeah.
Yeah.
But it reminded me as well of Gala's idea that she's wanted for a while, of this kind of graph system where you have a graph with nodes and edges, but each node can also contain its own graph.
Yeah.
And so I just think this whole idea of kind of having everything being the same kind of thing seems funny and useful, and maybe makes everything really easy. Or does it? Does it make everything harder? I don't know.
That's like where was I going with that? That's funny that you mentioned that, because I just set the logo for this channel to be like an inductive graph thing. Yeah, that reminded me of something. Oh, yeah, the term for that, I guess, is like homoiconic, right? Where it's like,
okay.
There's a single kind of representation.
Homoiconic.
Maybe I don't know if that is actually the term for this exact concept, but certainly related.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then how does it relate to the coffee table book? Because the coffee table book is a coffee table.
Yeah. That's right. So I think, yeah. Kramer came up with it first, but like it just feels. And I was just as always at the start of this podcast, I look around my house and try and think of examples. And I was like, I couldn't. I was looking at my cats, and I was like, how does it?
How does this pertain to cats?
How does this pertain to my cat? I couldn't quite work it out, but.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah.
Is it a good idea? Is it useful? Like, should we do it more? Is there some example where it's easy to think about? Like, certainly it seems like in the Cyrate example that I was just thinking of. So just for the people that don't know, Cyrate is kind of, you get a list of papers and then you get to click like on them, just like on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And I've often wanted to kind of have reading groups and subsets of different papers and recommended papers and all this stuff. And I was just kind of thinking, doing any of that is too much work. But then just kind of, I was thinking this week, well, it's like, what if each user was its own kind of feed of papers? Then you can kind of implement anything you want, maybe, via just kind of, you know what I mean? You're just kind of setting it up in that way. And then that kind of means that I don't have to do heaps of busy work implementing all these different things. I just build one feature, which is everything is a feed feature. And then everything just works really easily.
I think so.
And I just thought that was cool.
Yeah, I think it works pretty well. The place where I've got a little bit of kind of uncertainty is around this tagging notion, where it's like, are you tagging like a feed, or are you tagging a subset of the feed's like items, and like how do you work into that, this idea of retrospective kind of tagging without kind of junking up your homepage where you see stuff and stuff like that. You're like, well, I want to subscribe to this other person's tag of cats or whatever. And then they're like, well, I had kind of tagged a couple of posts that about cats, and maybe I then go back and tag another one, and so it pops up in your feed. And then, but actually now I've kind of decided to tag this whole, or a third party upstream has decided to tag one of their whole streams of feeds as cats or something, and then it's like, maybe it's a non-problem, but it seems a little fiddly. It's like, well, do you just kind of like apply the tag to individual items, and then that is what it is, and it's kind of done, or do you kind of apply it dynamically based on feeds and stuff?
Yeah.
Who knows? Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Maybe you need like two distinct concepts. There's feed tags and item tags, and the two really aren't related that much.
Yeah. I guess like maybe just in general, I was kind of wondering like how, what's the, like, is this something you can think of only after stuff exists, or should you be able to think of it before it exists? Should I have kind of, like, because it kind of feels like if I thought of it before, let's suppose I built Cyrate, which I didn't. But suppose I thought of it as soon as I was building Cyrate, it would have felt like too much to build it in at the start. So maybe it's like you can't ever kind of conceive of these things before it's kind of too late. Or maybe it would have been much better to build it in for the start, then my life would be really easy. I was just kind of thinking in like, if I'm going to design a little API or programming languagey thing, I don't know quite how to express it, but I was just thinking like, should I try and think of this beforehand, or should I kind of just have it in my mind while I'm building my little programming language and just try and be like, which things can I unify here to kind of, so I can delete heaps of stuff. You know what I mean? That feels like a good thing to be doing.
Yeah, well, I mean, it seems like 99% of like programming language designers kind of do it as a concept exercise, right? Where they're like, well, I want to try out this concept, or I've got this couple of concepts and I'm going to try them out. And the rest is almost like an afterthought. about, well, how can I then make it more flexible to do other, useful things? Unless, I mean, not that it doesn't happen, but I think it's like quite rare, because I think most language design is almost like experimental or hypothesizing about stuff. So it's more like a proof of a concept than it is about providing a real useful language. And I think, like, in that regard, if you want to have a certain kind of feature like you're describing, you kind of want to start with it. Otherwise, it's going to be annoying to kind of rejig things to put it in later.
Yeah.
But if, like, I mean, you could have a more general abstract concept of, like, something which would allow you to have the flexibility to do that kind of stuff. Like, well, my language is going to mostly kind of be a very simple lambda calculus, but it's got a plug-in system to allow you to do whatever, or something like that.
Yeah. Can I throw you another totally different idea that I had just now? It's just before we were chatting, I had a really stupid thought, right? Which is that on LinkedIn or on the internet, you see people and they have lots of different photos.
They sure do.
And they have photos, like, one of the photos they have, like, one of their profile photos is kind of like this one, where they're, like, staring off at something to the left.
Mm-hmm.
Or then they've got, like, the one like this where they're staring at the camera, or, the crossed arms, or however people cross their arms. And, like, so the point is, like, you could be looking left, right, up, down, at the camera. Maybe you could have a photo of yourself speaking at a conference or presenting a lecture or something, right?
Yeah.
But maybe there's only like 10 kinds of photos, right?
Sure.
And I just thought, obviously, I just thought it would be funny to see all the similar kinds of photos together, right? Like, that would be hilarious.
Sure would.
And more to the point is, like, I don't know, whatever, who cares? You could, like, make a photo of you kind of rotating between all the different looks and so on and so on and so on and so on.
Yeah.
Right? Obviously a fun thing to think about and do. But then I was just thinking, and then I was like, okay, well, I've got 5 minutes. I should try and do this. And then, like, I just was really quickly looking up how I would scrape LinkedIn photos or whatever. And I got immediately bored, right? Because I'm like, this is way too much work.
Definitely.
I really don't want to do this work right now.
Yeah.
And because I was just kind of thinking, well, how would I solve this problem? Maybe, like, let me try and draw a picture. Maybe I'd have some kind of code. Let me see here. So I guess it's going to have like a deep learning part. It's going to have like an energy part. It's going to have like a labely thing, and then it's going to have like a web page or something. I don't know. It's not a great picture, but, like, what I'm trying to get at is there's different boxes of stuff. There's different stuff I'd have to do. And here's my idea. Here's my general idea. Is I was just thinking, wouldn't it be cool if I could kind of sketch out that picture in some kind of hybrid drawing interface and programming interface?
Mm-hmm.
And the sketchy part, like, for example, my sketchy part, I could just sketch out these image labeling things, and that would kind of all be mocked out. And then I could build my kind of interface where I would show it, for example. And the sketchy part would kind of be filled in with fake dummy data by this tool.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of don't care what the data is right now, because I just want to get a feel for how I'm going to make this website look. Or alternatively, I just kind of want to connect up some deep learning algorithm, so I kind of don't care where the images are coming from. Just give me literally any images and let me kind of use this little deep learning library to kind of set up a labeling interface to let me solve this problem.
Yeah.
So all I'm trying to say is, like, it's like if I was allowed to tackle all those problems independently, maybe I could just make progress much, much faster. But do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, you've got to kind of set up all this busy work to even get started in this.
That's right. Yeah. And I was just kind of thinking, like, I wonder what one could do. And it's like, well, how do you get yourself in a situation where you can spin up projects like that really fast? well, the answer is like obvious and stupid, which is like you just have to have done lots of them, and you just kind of copy and paste your own code, you know. And I think like I certainly do that all the time with other projects that I start, and it's kind of very it's kind of very obvious, but also very unsatisfying, because it's not really an answer. It's just like, well, you just have to have done it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think like 99% of people who are like able to do that rapid prototyping stuff effectively do exactly what you say. You know, they have a little template that they reuse. For obvious reasons, because they know it works and they know how to change it, right? But yeah, like that, I share that kind of idea of like, wouldn't it be nice if you can just kind of roughly sketch out something and have it kind of like fill in the blanks until you're ready to change them into something more meaningful.
Exactly.
And that's kind of what I was one of the things I was hoping to achieve with that visual systems idea, right? Where it's like, yeah, you kind of just want to draw this data dependency graph, and it will figure out how to like supply some dummy data there for testing. Until you've got something real to use, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
That's still in its kind of like infancy, really, because I never built it. But the idea is right. Yeah, you set up a kind of system of nodes and edges, and yeah, you can have like nested graphs inside the nodes and stuff like that, where it's like, oh well, you're just kind of describing the shape of how the data moves.
Exactly.
But at the same time, you're kind of constructing like a perspective into a broader schema of how all your data fits together. And then these kind of like nodes could be like transformational nodes, where they say, well, you know, I take 2 images and I produce a mosaic image or whatever, or it's like, you know, I take an X and a Y coordinate and I tell you the pixel color of an image or something like that.
Exactly.
And so,
and like, it just feels so cool. Like, it feels like if you had something like that, you could build it so it's reasonably applicable to multiple problems. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like it has to be super specific. Anything that just kind of lets me define the shape of my images and then kind of do some branching off the whatever decision I make, you know. And it's like, it feels like it would be so cool.
Yeah, well, I mean, in my kind of like survey of existing tech, there are some systems like that, but they're nearly universally very kind of special purpose, which is the problem.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's like, you know, like task engine style stuff like Airflow or Luigi or whatever, where it's like, but they don't actually let you sketch the graph. They just draw it for you based on your code. But whatever, that's one way of constructing a graph. Then there are like the game engine ones, which are much more closely similar to what you described, where it's like Unreal has a kind of like graphical data flow engine. And I think, some of the other game engines like Unity, I think, have some as well. And then there's like real old school ones like LabVIEW and whatnot.
Yeah.
And they're pretty cool. But yeah, they're all like hyper specialized, and it's certainly not going to be something that you're going to be able to spin up and be like, and now I'm going to apply it to like creating machine learning powered RSS feeds. It's like, not really, like, not without a lot of wrangling, and that defeats the purpose, because you want it to be some expressive framework for kind of sketching these ideas.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think the thing, there's the kind of that other one that we've talked about a couple of times that's changed its name recently, but it used to be called Luna.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's changed as. Maybe it's Solar or something. But I think that one's annoying because it's its own programming language.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't want to. The whole thing is I don't want to do programming.
Yeah.
I want to be doing something else. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, these ones, like, I think like that's a big missing piece, is they don't have good FFI kind of support.
Yeah.
Or like integration support for other services and languages and systems and stuff, and it's like, actually that should probably be like the thing they're best at, right? Because otherwise
exactly.
you're just kind of got an even worse problem than before, where it's like, okay, now I can sketch the thing, but actually, like, to implement it, I've first got to, you know, implement a matrix math library. Like, Jesus Christ.
Language, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No thanks. Or wait for someone else to, which is going to take like no one knows how long.
Yeah. Jump on their forums, tell them there's no way they can implement matrix math in their language, and then
yeah. But also, like, yeah, nearly all of these systems make a very kind of deliberate choice of, well, is it going to be like single process kind of synchronous data flow, or is it going to be kind of service integration style batch jobs, or is it going to be like a kind of numerics streaming platform or something? It's like,
yeah,
I mean, yeah, those are all very different things, but the sketch looks very similar, right? So it's like this sketching framework should be able to be reused between these paradigms.
Exactly. Yeah, it doesn't feel that hard, does it? It's like you just have this little thing, and then it can kind of like pump data through, and the data source can be like anything. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah, I think that's really quite. It would really be so nice.
Yeah, so I think there's room for something like that for real. But I guess like then there's kind of like these historical issues that any of these graphical interfaces have in program construction of like, well, yeah, like how do you version control that stuff effectively, and like, you know, what happens when your non-technical users are trying to construct something very elaborate, and like, how do you collaborate, and like those are still real concerns. And so I think like I don't have an answer to all of them, but my opinion is you want to have like a correspondence between like a visual representation which you can manipulate and like a, you know, language grammatical kind of system that you can manipulate. And you can just kind of go back and forth as you choose. And it should be kind of like stable in that you can operate in one, you know, exclusively if you want, and it should all just work. Or like, yeah, your non-technical users should feel free to drag arrows around, and that can automatically commit to Git if there's no conflict, and it like shouldn't be rewriting the entire source file just because they moved an edge or something, right?
Totally.
I think like that would solve some problems, maybe not all problems.
Yeah.
But also like, yeah, then that kind of hints at, well, really like all of these kind of representational alternatives are kind of like a view into the same kind of abstract notion of a program, which is cool, right? Like there have been some people experimenting that where it's like, yeah, rather than kind of writing text files, you're kind of moving around your program's abstract syntax tree, or like, you know, that kind of thing. Like what is it? Unison is kind of doing some work in that space, and, you know, but it feels kind of like very philosophical, you know, like anyway, his name escapes me, but it's like one of those kind of early 20th century philosophers was like big into that language representation, maybe Wittgenstein or something.
Yeah, okay, no, I don't know who.
But anyway, getting off track. But the idea is like, yeah, exactly as you described. You want to be able to like quickly sketch out some idea, apply it to the kind of paradigm or application space where you're working in, and have it kind of fill in the blanks.
Exactly.
But then also not be a throwaway toy, actually be able to kind of transform into a useful production system without having to rewrite the whole damn thing.
Yeah, I think the way that I kind of see it, well, one way that I can see it working is like everything starts out as like a gray sketch, And then as you kind of implement parts, they become blue. And then maybe like once everything's blue, well, either like the kind of the sketch could kind of be thrown away, or like you keep the sketch and it's somehow directly attached to the actual code. But the actual code could be in many different languages. Like it could be in Python, and it could be like a whatever data source from over here, and this and this. And I think the one thing that I remember that is slightly similar to this, but I could never ever get it to work very well, was this thing called Yahoo Pipes. Did you ever use that?
No, I didn't. I didn't use that. There are several that I did use, like if this then that.
Yeah.
And what's the really, really popular Zapier?
Yeah.
Is
I've
like
heard
the
of
most kind of
Zapier.
successful implementation of that concept, I think.
Yeah.
Commercially, at least.
Totally. Yeah. Very, very, very businessy.
Yeah, and there's a few new ones that came out recently with that same idea too, which
Yes.
but usually, like, the frustration about all of those ones is that they're very unambitious in terms of like what they technically try to achieve from
Totally.
From a flexibility standpoint, at least. Like maybe they're very good at sending emails technically, and that's very ambitious, but it's certainly not ambitious to like nerds, you know. Like they don't try to kind of be very encompassing in what you can achieve with the platform.
Yeah. No, and it's this whole problem that you pointed out, which is that FFI interface. It was like you have to live in their ecosystem, and that's kind of like, well, it's okay if that's what you want to do, but like if you want to do something really, you know, it's like that's annoying if what you want to do is not in their ecosystem, because then there's nothing you can do other than pay them money or just wait or something.
Yeah, or hope they've got some kind of like HTTP service plug-in which you can then kind of like munch something together or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
But,
exactly.
It's not great usually. But like it's interesting to tie that back to the feeds concept, because the feeds one is like a similar kind of problem space, and if you had such a way to sketch, then you could do it using that model. But I guess like feeds is a little bit less general in that it's like, rather than a graph or whatever, it's just a tree that you can annotate and filter, right?
Yeah.
So it should be simpler, but it's still similar.
Yeah, so that's kind of what's been, that's what was interesting me this morning, is just kind of just wondering like how, like what, just kind of thinking about like, well, what are the tools that we have to like help us do this kind of prototyping or like building pointless programs much faster, you know? And I think like, I don't know, it would just be cool to have some of those tools. I don't know how possible it is.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So what should we do? I don't want to like rope us into actually having to build any of this stuff.
Oh God, no.
Because that's like annoying. But
yeah, absolutely.
Should we like stay on this topic of discussion forever?
No, or, I think let's change, definitely.
Or change it up next week or something. Yeah. Any other kind of interesting ideas that you've been thinking about lately?
Well, I think like what are the other kind of things that I was thinking about? I mean, it's too similar, but I don't know if it's similar, but I've been playing Go, and I've been really impressed by this little web interface where I've been playing Go on, and I just got really excited about how it lets me explore like all kinds of different moves and so on. And I don't know really what to make of it. I just thought it was very cool.
Yeah.
And it never kind of seen the data. Like, I wish I could think of a different example, but it's just kind of like, it was just such a cool way of letting me do something very simple, which was try out different moves, but in a way that was very, very flexible.
Yeah. Yeah, the kind of time traveling nature of the thing and experimental kind of, it just seems to work really seamlessly.
Yeah, it worked it was so smooth. And then I've been watching all these videos of people playing Go, and it's just been really cool to see how all these, like, maybe here's what I think about is like, it's a very sophisticated kind of analysis tool that anyone is able to use. And I just thought that's really cool, because most of these kind of power tools that people have in their websites, they're like unusable by anyone.
Definitely.
You know, it's like, I think Gala was trying to find all people that live in London in Facebook, and she couldn't work it out.
Yeah.
And it's like, it turns out you have to just search London friends in Facebook. It's like, whatever, who cares? But the point is, like, I just found it a really cool example of something that was like very usable but also sophisticated.
Yeah, no doubt. It's like definitely one of the kind of best analysis tools for lay people that I've seen. I guess, well, not lay people, but like Go domain experts rather than anything to do with generalized analysis.
Yeah, well, it's like they don't need to know anything about the computer science or whatever, anything. The interface was smooth, and it was just like, wow, you've done a really great job. Like, it was just so nice.
Yeah, it's brilliant, to be honest.
Yeah.
And especially, like, I like that the same kind of interface is preserved across, like, you know, historical, speculative game playing and real-time competitive game playing. You can still kind of use the same interface, and it works. Like, you'd think there'd be something jarring there where it's like, oh, yeah, you can't do that thing here, but it's like, no, you can do it.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's a good example. Like, I know we haven't even gone that off topic, because that's a really good example of that kind of making things equal to other things. What did you call it? Homoiconic something.
Yeah,
it's
I
like
think
the analysis interface is the play interface.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's not homoiconicity. Like, I think homoiconicity is like the syntactic format is the same as like the data format, and you can then use the data format to construct kind of new programs through the syntax.
Yeah.
So it's like Lisp's, or like a kind of schemes, kind of like S expression thing is the canonical kind of homoiconicity example, where it's like, you can use a function to spit out more data which looks exactly like a function, and then if you so choose, you can use it as a function. And then there are some conveniences which they've built in with their quoting and unquoting systems, which allow you to seamlessly transition back and forth between those two things, and it all looks the same, which is nice.
Yeah.
But I think like what we've described is certainly like one of the prerequisites of that. And then if we had this notion of, you know, data output and then close the circle, then we'd have true homoiconicity.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. What kind of stuff have you been thinking about?
Mainly work. So I've been trying to build a test suite for this product, and it's interesting times, because there's lots of ways to build test suites, and usually I like to do very low level kind of unit test style focused testing, where you can write quick check properties in Haskell, because then you don't have to come up with any examples, which is nice.
Really?
But actually this is the opposite in this case. It's like, this is pretty much kind of like an integration test suite, and I've built it like an actor, where it's like you expect someone else, or like you have a script to set up all your services and everything kind of running in its own little ecosystem, and this test suite is a little actor that then kind of like probes and interrogates the thing. So it's kind of like the opposite of the usual approach I take, but I've been using like Tasty and HSpec and Golden tests and things like that, and it's all the kind of like ecosystem stuff is working very well actually, and I've had a pretty good time with it. But you know, like some ecosystem things within the product itself are like, you always get surprised when you're like writing a test suite and things don't behave exactly as you'd expect them to. So I'm in the midst of doing that. Not that there's no testing for the product already. It's just like this is a new suite.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's almost ready to kind of like be brought into the fold and used by the rest of the team. So that should be fun.
Great.
But yeah, I also did some thinking about, I guess, what I've called like abstract virtues, which is like this notion we chatted about once before, which is like the simplest example I can think of is it's like you generally think people with a good memory are just like better people, It's like they have like greater moral character because they got a good memory.
Yeah.
And it's like it sounds absurd, but like if anyone has ever forgotten your name, it's intuitively true, right?
Yes.
But really, actually, it's one of those things which you don't really have much control over as an individual. Certainly not in the moment where you either are remembering or forgetting something. Maybe if you like
you mean
practice a lot.
When you're forgetting something, you're like, I'm going to choose to either forget or remember.
Yeah, why should I choose to remember this jerk's name? I don't like them. They're ugly. I will not.
I will right now forget their name. Gone.
Yeah. So certainly in the moment you don't have much control over it.
True.
But yeah, I was thinking it's quite annoying because I have a very bad memory, especially for names. So
yes.
Yeah, I was thinking like, well, actually, maybe it's a bit more nuanced than that because you could, if you chose, like do memory exercises to improve your memory, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, maybe you are not failing morally as an individual because you forgot this person's name at that moment. You're failing because you're not doing enough memory exercises.
That's right. Yeah.
But then I was like, well, what's a kind of general concept around that? And I've called it like abstract virtues, where it's like the things I've tried to think up are like strength, adaptability, memory, and all of these things, where it's like, even though really they don't kind of carry any moral implications on their own, like people will interpret a kind of moral weight in the individuals who either possess or don't possess these to a greater or lesser degree.
Yeah.
Usually unconsciously, and then form an opinion of these people. And then also I've tried to break it down into like, well, I'll just like open up a link because I was writing a blog post on it. If I can do such a thing. And then that should be visible. There we go. Great. Yeah, well, whatever. You can't see this, I don't think, or can you?
No, I can't.
Anyway, whatever. But I'll just quickly talk about it because you can see it on the screencast, but you personally can't see it. But I can link you to it so you can see it.
Brilliant.
But yeah, so I kind of came up with a list of these candidates for these kind of abstract ethical kind of attributes, and then for each one I discussed like a little description of it, why it's abstract, what is its moral interpretation, like what could be considered like the corresponding vice for the virtue, and then like considering that training idea of like, well, maybe you don't have it now, but maybe you could have done something to work on it in the past.
Yeah.
Right? And then, I talked about, I think it was strength, memory, energy, focus, persistence, charisma, intelligence, improvisation, gregariousness was, I think, an interesting one. Consideration, speed, and willpower were the ones that I thought of off the top of my head. But yeah, that's probably some of them could be chucked and some other things could be included. But yeah, that's like one thing I was thinking about recently.
Yeah, I actually just finished reading this book on altruism, and one thing it made that's a little bit related that it made apparent to me is that there's a difference between empathy and compassion, which is like maybe you have high empathy for how other people are feeling, which kind of means like if you're sad, I feel really sad, or if you're happy, I feel really happy. But just because, let's say, if you're sad, I'm really sad, that doesn't mean I kind of want things to go well for you, let's say. And what he was kind of talking about in this book on altruism is all these people that kind of suffer this emotional burnout, like health professionals. His argument was they all have a high empathy, but not necessarily high compassion.
That's interesting.
And what he was saying is like when you kind of do this work to increase the amount of compassion you have, then you can deal with this emotional burnout much easier. And I found that personally very interesting because I think I have quite high empathy, which makes me kind of get quite stressed or whatever in certain situations. And I just thought that there was nothing I could do about that. But what he's kind of saying is like, well, if you kind of practice also increasing the amount of compassion, then you can kind of deal with that a bit better. And it kind of reminds me of your abstract virtue.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think, it's definitely kind of like on the same wavelength, but I guess people wouldn't argue like that empathy is an abstract virtue. They would say that's just straight up virtue, you know. Most people at least.
Yeah. But that's what I think. So I thought so too, until I kind of was reading these books about empathy and was just thinking, actually, having really high empathy isn't necessarily great, you know, because it means like living your life, walking around is going to be a bit harder because like you're going to take on all these emotions of people around you. And so because I had always thought, like you should probably just always have like super high empathy, but maybe you don't even need to have empathy at all to have like compassion for people to want them to do well.
I think that's an interesting perspective, right? Because it's like, maybe empathy is the kind of like abstract notion in that it's like, well, actually you really can't control it that much necessarily at any particular time, and it doesn't necessarily kind of make you a more moral or less moral person in itself that you do or don't have more empathy. Really kind of the moral component of it is, as you say, like the compassion, right? Where it's like, well, what do you do in the situation? It's like, I'm a loan shark, and like I go up to someone and it's like, they're like, oh, if I can't get another week, I'm gonna lose my house and everyone in my family is gonna starve, and you're like, damn, that's bad. Like, I feel for you, man, but shit, not my I gotta get paid, you know. So it's highly empathetic, but not very compassionate.
Exactly right. Exactly.
So that's interesting. But that one's especially interesting, I think, because like empathy maybe on its own is kind of like a weakness in terms of your ability to do stuff, right? Because it's like, well, if only I wasn't encumbered with all this empathy, I could just do what I want at all times, right?
Exactly.
But actually, that's so it's like it is an abstract virtue, but it's one with like an inverse kind of utility in a sense, right? Like, actually, I don't believe that. I think like there is a lot of positive utility that comes out of empathy as well, in terms of being able to kind of like form good mental models of like how other people are actually thinking.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it's interesting. Yeah. Where did you read that?
That was in this book called Altruism by this guy called Matthew Ricard.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a big book, but I kind of quite liked it.
Yeah, that's kind of like what's missing from this blog post is I still got a few of those attributes I had to flesh out, but also I was hoping to kind of put some links to other books and essays or whatever on the same topic, which I usually do, which I haven't done yet.
Yeah, the other book that I read is this one called I Feel You by Chris Bean.
Yeah.
And that was the one on empathy, kind of showing how I can't remember if this is the one, but talking about how all these businesses are kind of trying to, you know, how there's apparently there's all these stories of businesses like Facebook kind of hiring empathy engineers, you know, and stuff, and attention engineers, like how can I get your attention and how can I make you feel things, and how there's kind of like a business component to empathy and stuff like that. So it's a little bit weird.
Yeah, well, we all know Facebook are jerks. So.
Oh, of course, huge jerks.
Trust them to take something like empathy and corrupt it into a marketing kind of
screw it up,
construct.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Should we wrap it up?
I think so, yeah.
Thanks, Noon.
Yeah, thanks, man.
See you later.
See you later.